All right. Hey, man, it's good to be back. My name is Milton,
I'm Devin.
and we are back with Bridging the Gap, right? It's been nice. We've been for a little bit, but you know what? We're here again. And you just got back from Surfside, right?
Yes, I did.
Nice big cEDH tournament. I think 92 entries. Keaton came out top in there, for those of you guys who haven't heard. But what are some big things that you wanted to take away from it, like help out, that you wanted to talk about after that, right?
Yeah, I want to talk about threat assessment. Threat assessment seems to be a large problem in the cEDH tournament scene, just because a lot of people don't pay attention to what's on board and what's actually happening throughout the game.
Fair enough. I've definitely had some games, not so much in tournaments, but definitely more on the Wild West of online, where threat assessment has just been like, I don't know what the fuck we're doing here. I don't know what we're doing here. We're all having a hard time. Let's figure it out, right? What are some things that you definitely take a look at in threat assessment, right?
The first thing I look at for threat assessment is whenever a player casts a spell, retake what's on the board. Look at what's on the board, what the spell is doing. So if someone's casting a Dockside, count how many artifacts or enchantments are on board, how much mana they're going to get out of it, how much mana they currently have. Is it worth countering the spell? Is it not worth countering the spell? Or if it's something like a tutor. If they have enough mana to cast the spell that they're going for, typically if they have 3 or 4 mana, then you might want to counter the tutor, or you might want to counter the spell that they tutored for. It all depends on the situation and what they have on board.
Honestly, if you can do both, do both.
Yeah.
But I kind of agree with that. Definitely consistently taking stock of the board state is a huge cEDH thing, right? Mm-hmm. When you're playing a lot more casual, you know, the board state tends to not change as much over one single rotation, but in cEDH, one rotation can just be the difference between a win and a loss, right? It's very relevant, very important that, you know, your consistent board state is taken care of, right?
Yep.
Understanding exactly where your problems are, where your concerns are, is crucial, right? That is assessing what the threats are, right? You have to know what's there to assess the threats. But what is really crucial, right, for me is looking at confirmed threats versus potential threats, right? And you and I play lots of decks that have very, very big, high potential threat levels, right?
Yes.
I would consider, right? You'll see those in decks like Blue Farm when they have yet to drop their Adnaz, or that potential threat of an Adnaz, or Heliod, when like in a pre-flip, pre-wheel, like you don't know what could happen. It's definitely not a thing you want to be aware of, but you definitely think you want to be aware of, but you cannot stop. But you need to understand the difference between a potential threat and a this wins the game threat, right?
Yep.
So, for example, there's a very short list of cards that I consider A tier. This will not stand threats, right? Underworld Breach is one.
Yep.
A Dockside is almost always one, right? And I even point that out, almost always, right? There are definitely times when I'm like, you can have the Dockside because you have no cards in hand, no draw. Like, you're just trying to make sure that Dockside gets out of your hand, essentially, right?
Unless you're against a Corvold player, then it's always a 1.
It depends, right? It can definitely depend, right? I will say that there's times when I will let, and I know this is insane, I will let Dockside resolve to make sure that their other spell that they're going for that Dockside does not, right? Sometimes you only have the Mindbreak Trap. Sometimes you can't hit a creature. Sometimes that Force of Will is rough. You got to be aware of it, right?
Makes sense.
Confirmed threats are stuff that you know are going to get you that combo, right? A Thassa's Oracle is a confirmed threat, right? It doesn't not always get you there, but if you can stop the Thassa's and not the Tainted Patch, you're in a better spot, right? Unless you have a Trick Bind or a Stifle effect, very nice, right? But there's definitely going to be times when you say, this win con is too risky, the pros outweigh the cons, stuff like that, right? Next thing, right? You definitely hate sandbaggy stuff, right? Like, you're very much a non-blue player.
Yes.
So you definitely see a lot of outside looking in for 3 blue players. Someone's got something, right?
Yeah. Someone should always have something. I play with the mindset where I play in a lot of pods where there's a lot of blue players. In our local store, every blue player I play with is playing conservative. They're making sure that priority is followed for reactions, and they're also making sure that when they counter something, it's for the better of the table or for better for their gameplay. But because my playgroup plays conservative, I'm able to get away with some things that are valuable to me that they might not see right away, or they know that it's valuable, but another piece is more valuable that I want not countered.
That blessing and curse of when you play with the same group of people for so long, they know what your deck does, sometimes even better than you do sometimes, right? And that is something we definitely see kind of often, right?
Yes.
People kind of forget that decks can be built in a lot of different ways, a lot of different tricks, right? The danger that is in your personal deck is not always the danger in a mirror deck, or the danger you see at your LGS is not something that you're always going to see, right? In my LGS, a card that we tend to really not like, counterbalances, right? We tend to hate some counterbalances in our store, right? In our group counterbalance, because we already know what the things are. We have a pretty good understanding of each other's averages, so we know when to flip it, when to hold it, right? In the Wild West, sometimes you gotta let the counterbalance go, right? And obviously, it's not just counterbalance, right? It's a great card. Whenever an opponent has a spell, you can reveal the top. If it shares the same CMC, you can counter that. Very good, right? But, for example, sometimes you just got to be aware that other people you might not have that same concern that you do in your locals as the Wild West, right? Which is why I'm always such a big proponent of you play Wild, you play online, you play as much as you can, many different places you can, right? And I think a lot of people who go to these tournaments have this really strong idea of being a big fish in a big pond, right? And it sucks, right? It's really rough. It's something we had to learn ourselves at another point.
There's always a bigger fish.
There's always a bigger fish, man. You got to quote Star Wars to yourself. There's always a bigger fish. Sometimes your pond is not as big as you thought it was, right? I've seen so many people being like, oh, I'm playing cEDH because it just tears apart my store. And I look at this and I was like, I mean, it's not bad, but I consider this a 7, right? And I'll build decks that I think are strong 10s, and then a legacy person comes up and is like, what are you doing here, child? Get out of my face, right? You know, it's kind of crazy seeing lots of different potential options, right? And, you know, what do you always think about that? Because you see that very often.
Yeah.
Right?
The thing about that is that, like, threat assessment goes 2 ways. There's the aggressor who's trying to stop your stuff, and then there's you. In the Surfside tournament, I had a counter war over my commander.
Commander's not even that good.
In hindsight, I should have just let my commander get countered. If I let it get countered, I would have had interaction for the player coming right after me, and I would have been able to stop him from winning the game altogether.
Good call.
But because I wanted my commander on board, because my commander provides me so much value, we ended up in a counter war. Everyone ended up using all their interaction on me, which forced, not forced, it gave
that next guy that really good opening.
The automatic win.
Yeah, that's true.
So when you're looking at threat assessment, when I cast my commander, I had 3 mana left. The person delayed my commander. Instead, I should have just let it go. Or I could have attempted to red Elemental Blast, which I did, and then he ended up forcing. At that point, I should have just gave up on the counter war. I had more than enough mana to cast my commander next turn and continue with some type of play. It wouldn't have been the best play, but it would have been some type of play.
Safer.
Yes, it would have been safer, which would have allowed the Tivit player that we were playing with to force the Kiki Jiki that came down and just took over the game.
Yeah. There's definitely those specific times when you had to complete to yourself, is it worth it to continue this fight, right? And I think that every player needs to really look at that, personally, in my opinion, a little bit more often, right? I'll see people who dig their heels in and be like, well, I've already spent 2 cards in it. It's that sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah.
Right? I sunk 2 cards into it. I need to make sure I have it. Listen, sometimes you got to make sure. You have to remember to yourself, that is a real thing, right? It's that same thing that gacha games do, that same thing that you see on when you're playing Genshin Impact at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're going to buy another game. Like, it's the same thing, right? You already spent 2 counter spells. You might as well go full send, right? Remember, you are not in a 1v1, right? Especially in Commander, right? You are now saying, hey, I need to account not only for my one person, and I can beat this one person down, and then what happens to the next 3 people or the next 2 people? I mean, you have to remember, right? That sunk cost fee will get you. I have fallen to it. You fall into it. I think every player I know who's played more than 2 games has fallen into it at some point, right? That second counterspell, it gets you.
Yep.
Once you have to know exactly how much everything is worth to you.
Exactly.
And some cards, they are worth that full counter rip, right? Full ad nos, I mean, you just can't let that get away with, right?
Ad nos needs to be countered.
Unless you drop a silence. Silence on an ad nos is the best thing. Just like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, most Black players, since they're playing in either Rakdos or Grixis, if they don't have the counter spell for your silence, the ad nos is just not going to do anything.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, man, I feel like we're getting a little bit winded in the teeth. But overall, like, rapid fire, 3 quick things that you want to take away from threat assessment that you think everyone needs to know.
Always make sure of what's being played. Take account of what's always on the board state, and if it seems like a lost cause, then just let it happen. Ignore it. Focus on the bigger things. If someone goes Underworld Breach and then you force a negation like their brain freeze, they can't continue after that.
Very true, very true. For me, I definitely want to always remember, 1, never forget that sunk cost fallacy. 2, sometimes you just got to let it happen. You got to make them have it. Sometimes you need to remember that, like, they don't have all the counter spells, even as much as it feels like they do. And 3, it's not a spite fact if you can ritual your way out of it, right? Sometimes you got to do it. That does help a lot. All right. Once again, this is Milton.
I'm Devin.
All right, guys, we'll see you soon. Don't forget to follow us on TikTok, everything we're on. I don't even know what we're on anymore, man.
Instagram.
There we go. Instagram, TikTok, all of it. We'll have all those links down below. Thanks for hanging out for a little bit. We'll see you soon.
See you guys later.